Alrighty, folks, welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, October 18th, 2024, and this is episode 963 of Living Free in Tennessee. And it's a homestead happening show, so we're going to do an update from the homestead with the tactical redneck who is sitting next to me right now. And we experimented with an introduction video for the live stream so that people have a chance to log in, because sometimes what happens is I start talking and the live isn't really live.
No, usually when I get onto a live stream, it's showing me ads, so I missed the intro.
Okay. So, well, I don't have ads enabled on my live streams.
I don't know.
That was a long time ago. Yeah, I turned those off because they were annoying. So anyway, today we're going to talk about more about the sheep breeding strategy that's being implemented here over the weekend and probably well into next week. I expect us to be chasing a lot of sheep in the next 7 to 14 days until everybody figures out the new plan. GSD projects that are happening in East Tennessee and more. Before we jump into that, I want to say to everybody in the live stream, this is our more interactive show. If you have questions about what we're talking about or want to bring something up, just put it in the comments. If you put the word question in all caps, it's easier for me to see. So that would be super helpful. And if you don't, I'll try to see it anyway, but I don't always see them. And Kiri and Tim, welcome to the live stream. Our featured event of today's show is the off-grid water webinar that Ryan Steva, the homestead consultant.com, is doing on October 30th for our members. If you are a member of Living Free in Tennessee, it's a free webinar. And if you log into your member portal, we'll have the link there for you. I will send an email to asking you to RSVP just so we know approximately how many of you are coming. If you want to buy just a one-off webinar, it's $45. And the link to that is in the comments or the description of the YouTube video, as well as the show notes. You can always go to livingfreeintennessee.com to sign up for such things as well. We have two sponsors of today's show, and the first one's all about money.
Okay.
Money's important, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and when you earn money, it really sucks that you have to give some of it back, like 33% to 40% of your income going back to support government programs I don't even believe in. That kind of sucks. So a great way to reduce the amount of money you pay in taxes is to work with somebody like agristaxadvice.com to analyze how all your funds are coming in, identify what sort of write-offs and structures you can put in place to maximize the dollars you keep in your pocket. Check out more at agristaxadvice.com. Our second sponsor of today is Simmerwell. What does Simmerwell do that's pretty freaking fantastic?
I'm not sure who you're talking about.
That's AJ's business, man.
Oh.
Yeah. What does Simmerwell do that's pretty freaking fantastic?
The freeze-dried bone broth?
Freeze-dried bone broth. And why do we love freeze-dried bone broth?
Because it's good.
It's not just good. So Simmerwell sources all of their ingredients from local nearby farms. So you have regeneratively raised cows and chickens and whatever broth. Sometimes he does game broths, like I think he did buffalo or venison the other day. And then they freeze dry it in these handy little packets so that when you're like me and you're out on the road and you're like, you know what? I don't want to eat airport food at the restaurant, but I want something hot and satisfying. I can just get hot water at any airport. I can pull my car over and boil water, and I can just take it in my coffee cup, pour the water in, and it's delicious. This stuff has saved my butt more times than you can imagine. Get yours at simmerwell.com. And if you want 10% off, we have a coupon code LFTN24. That gets you 10% off. He is shipping packages now. At some point, we'll grab him back on the show because he's just opened his commercial operation and let him tell you the story of getting that all set up. Okay, with that, it's time to go into all of the things we're going to talk about. And the first thing I want to talk about is the cute little baby bunnies.
Okay.
We have cute little baby bunnies on the homestead. Have you been petting their heads?
No.
Why not?
I've got too many other things.
He's too busy to give affection to animals, guys. But we've got about 9 baby bunnies, and they are black and they are white. But none of them are black and white. Have you noticed that?
No.
Yeah, so there's one bunny that keeps hopping out and hanging out outside the nesting box, which is where the warmth is. And I put that one back in. the other day, and it immediately hopped back out. So I decided if it could hop out, it could hop in. And everybody lived through the frost, but we're getting ready to transition them into a rabbit tractor. Do we have a rabbit tractor ready to go?
Nope.
Okay, so coming soon, videos of ways that Nicole Sauce is going to redneck a rabbit tractor for this set of rabbits. And what is the ultimate purpose of the rabbits at this point?
For me, it's mostly just dog food.
Yeah, so we use them for our livestock guardian dogs. We don't put them out there live. Well, we process the rabbits when they're big enough to process, which will be another couple months from now. And then we feed them to the livestock guardian dogs, and that helps offset our feed. I use the poop extensively in the gardens and the food forest. So
yeah.
Then, and right now we have what, 3 or 4 more beds to set up in the raised where we're moving the garden to.
We've got another 4 that just need to be filled.
So we're filling in garden beds. We're not buying any commercial soil, guys. And the way we're doing this is we put logs at the bottom in a very special way that we made a video about so that we don't have a cave in. And then we've been putting organic matter from the homestead and clay from the homestead in there. We did buy some topsoil that's just sitting in a pile that can be used there or other places for shaping the homestead. And then I'm like, Holler Roast generates a lot of compost material when we're roasting. So if I have a failed batch, and I had 50 pounds of failed batch last week because my roaster finished breaking completely. And so those buckets full of green beans or half roasted beans or over roasted beans, or there was a whole slew of things that happened, go into the beds so that they can just naturally compost over the winter. We're going to be scooping out the duck coop.
Yes.
Guess where that's going?
The duck coop actually needs it pretty bad.
Yeah.
Now.
So where is all that matter going?
Some of it's going there. I've got some other places I would like to use some of it.
What do you want to do with it?
Some of it I want to cap the 2 compost bins that we have down there.
Like a little layer to keep the moisture in?
Yeah, just a little extra to, keep warmth and moisture in. And then...
At the microphone, please.
There was another couple of spots where I might take a little bit of it and, like, I'm talking about half of a 5-gallon bucket and use it to kind of create a forward operating base for microbiology.
Where?
A couple of places. Like there's one spot in the pasture that I'm thinking about right now that is already a place where there is a hole. The hole could stand to get filled in, and like I'm already testing another spot like that where I took a bunch of, I took some rabbit manure and some compost and some other stuff, threw it in the hole, and then dumped a bunch of pine shavings on top of that. And then, of course, it hasn't rained.
It's not going to rain. Well, that's on our list today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I see the whole Brat Pack is here. We've got Kiri and AJ, Pippinized, Karita Lee, and Haas all in. Oh, Pack Rat's here, and Tim Weiss is here. Or Weiss. I don't know how to say your name. Visa. You can tell me later, Tim. Anyway, it's good to have you on. Do let us know if you want to hear about specific things. Okay, so my only thing about that is I usually have put duck litter out and had no problem with it burning plants. But when it's really time to scoop and I put it out near plants, it burns the plants.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
We'll see.
So you put a little bit, I guess it makes sense. I don't want to burn holes in the pasture that's taken so long to get into awesome pasture.
No, what I'm specifically trying is basically composting in place / creating a spot that will overwinter the microbiology.
It's Wies or Wies. I'm going to say Wies. Is it V? Is it a hard German V? Like geese, he says.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we are also, okay, so this morning or last night, So I thought we'd already decided this, but last night Tactical's like, we have to have a serious talk about the sheep. And I'm like, oh no, what do we have to talk about? I don't know who's breeding the who. So what did we decide last night as a result of that conversation?
Basically everybody but the twins and the babies.
Right. So we have 2 ewes who are called the twins, who are a year old, which means technically they're old enough to breed. And if we were doing twice a year, I would save them till March to breed, March to May. But we're not doing that, I don't think, unless we change our mind and only breed those 2. But I don't really like the offset thing.
I don't either.
And I just decided I'd rather wait another year on those girls to make sure they're totally ready to give birth than have to assist with a bunch of births because somebody was too small.
Yeah.
So we're going to be breeding 5 ewes. And we want to use the largest ram we have.
Yeah.
And then the 2 twins, who are basically adults, can hang out with the baby girls, which actually gives us a cool pasture with some adult action and some baby action, because the ram is going to be with the ewes for about 45 days. Hopefully. So, and that gives, usually you only need 30, like, they go in there and they usually will get them pregnant right away if they're in estrus. And then that kind of triggers the whole cycle happening. And then 2 weeks later, they're back. The ones who didn't get taken, get taken. But I thought it would be better to give it longer time. It's not going to hurt them to be with the ram that long, and he'll have the best 45 days of his life. And then hopefully we'll know next spring if everybody got pregnant or not.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, we need to assess everybody to see if anybody's pregnant already.
Okay.
Which could have happened.
Possible.
It's possible, not likely. I think we got the rams out of there fast enough to not have chaos pregnancies. Chaos pregnancies are not fun in your herd, but it does raise the question. So what has to be in place for us to have young females and rams, and the rams who need another 30 days before we take them to the butcher? All separate from each other.
Lots and lots of fencing.
And we use temporary fencing. So what's that mean financially?
I'm trying to figure out right now whether or not I'm going to be able to run everybody with the equipment that I have, or whether I need to just break and buy a little bit more. I was just getting to a point to where it's mostly reasonably easy to run 2 sets of sheep. So that means for me having at least 4 paddocks set up. And now I'm looking at that number needs to be 6. So I'm starting to strategize, because like the area where I'm getting ready to move all of the girls is an area where when I set it up as 4 paddocks complete, just because of the way that area is, and there's some permanent fencing over there. So it's like, okay, that basically instead of having them over there for a month-ish, it'll be more like 2 weeks-ish.
Or we have a totally separate area. This is going to drive you crazy. We have a totally separate area for the young ones that's way far away. And we have the ones that are going with the ram in that 4 paddock area, which is making his head explode. But then the ram is not close to the young ones, and we don't have a bad mistake.
Well, I mean, it's not making my head explode, because, like, if we're going to do that, that means we're bringing the babies over here, because I'm not putting them on the other side of the pasture where they're far away from the dogs, especially with the coyote pressure that we have right now.
Right.
So, like, that would just change the whole scenario completely. And there's a lot of permanent fencing over here. So it reduces the need for having an extra 4 reels for a paddock and takes it down to maybe 1 or 2.
Yeah. So that is what we're diving into this weekend. And it also involves bringing all females into the barn and sorting the females. And when we're sorting the females, I can trim their hooves and do the FAMSHA assessment to see what their parasite load looks like. And hopefully as a result of that, we get a better system for catching individual females. And I have an idea that doesn't take a lot of building things.
Okay, you say that.
So I do. It requires 2 cattle panels. And I need to go to Smithville today. So I could go buy 2 cattle panels while in Smithville.
Okay.
Are you open to the idea? He always looks like he doesn't believe me.
I'm open to the idea. And yes, you would be correct. I don't believe it.
So do you want to hear the idea?
Sure.
So we put them in the barn.
Okay.
And then we make, with cattle panels, a chute to the door.
Okay.
And then we drive them out one at a time, catching them, the one, and do what we need to do with the one, and then put it where we need to put it. And we can have the livestock trailer there for the ones that, aren't being, you know what I'm saying? Like we can sort the young ones into the livestock trailer, leave the adults out, bring the adults back up the hill where they're going to be, and then we'll have to move the babies, which will be super fun. But at least they're little.
I can see that ending horribly, but okay.
Is that any different or less chaotic than the boys? Yes, because you have a chute that you can drive them into, and we can use boards so they can't run through your legs and nail you in the knee or the nuts.
Getting the boys into the back rooms of the barn worked really well.
Yeah, but they can go from side to side, and it's a huge chaotic pain in the ass.
That's an easier fix than building a temporary chute.
I think we should try the chute. I think you should give the chute a chance.
Okay.
He doesn't, and we'll have to have Mom there shooting video, right?
Sure.
Okay. We had our first frost, and I did not have what I would. So in my head, what would be great to have over my raised bed is, out of the plastic conduit, a hoop with plastic over it that I can like lean up and down and up and down. That's what I think would be awesome. What I have is 2 plastic bins and some plastic like sheeting that we use to keep the paint from getting on the floor. And so what I did is I put the bins upside down over without hurting the plants. Use that to keep the plastic arched up over the raised beds, because that's what I had, and I wasn't going to make time to make the thing that that I can hinge up and down, and it worked just fine.
Yeah.
The only thing that happened is at the very outer edge of one corner was a basil plant that touched the plastic, which means when the frost hit the plastic, the basil plant got too cold and it got burnt. But my other basil plant under there made it fine. And I have Swiss chard in there, which can take some frost. Like the Swiss chard is looking beautiful. We're going to have some tonight for dinner because we're not going to go to a restaurant ripcord today. And that's actually a lot of what our fall vegetables look like, is Swiss chard and any herbs that haven't been hit by frost, because I didn't start lettuce because I was doing carnivore, and it just didn't seem like we needed a lot of lettuce. We may start some lettuce after the tree class. We'll see. It just depends. Because right now he really likes to make that noise opening. He doesn't just leave it with the lid off for some reason. He likes to make that noise on the live stream. Make it again. Oh, it didn't happen. You have to shake it first. What could possibly go wrong? Tim has a question. Any homestead communities in South Central Tennessee? My brother-in-law moved to Huntsville, and we're looking to buy property close by on the Tennessee side. We're currently in Memphis. Okay. So anybody in the comments? So the answer is, I'm sure there are. And I'm sure they're listening to this podcast.
It also depends on what you mean by South Central.
Yeah, it depends on exactly what you mean by South Central. Because Chattanooga is kind of in South Central, but then it's sort of on the east side. And there's a whole bunch of people over there. And then we've got a decent number of people in the Huntsville area. So
when you say South Central, I'm thinking left or right of Nashville. And it's like, it's just, Tennessee is a very long state. So
I would say this. Anywhere rurally that you buy to put a homestead in Tennessee, we probably are going to find you people
Yeah.
because there's a strong spirit of homesteading in the state. And some of the homesteaders are going to be people you get along with, and some are not. And that's fine. It's when you find the right community, you can. The Homesteaders Alliance groups that have been popping up by county, you can check on that. I think homesteadersalliance.com might exist, or they have a website, but on Facebook is where they're most active. So what that means is if you're not into Facebook, which a lot of us are not into Facebook, you kind of have to suck it up and go to Facebook to find people. I realize that. So and then Packrat saying Dixon and Hickman, slightly left of Nashville, closer to the Nashville, right? And counties going further to the south all over the place. Like Manchester has a Homesteaders Alliance, like all sorts of different places. And I'm sure when you find an area you like, start looking at people that are there and see if you can meet them in person before you like buy a place. Because the other thing I see people doing is like buying a place, because when you're a homesteader, it's easier to buy a place because you can do what you want. But then once you buy a place, you're kind of like you're in that place. And Landstruck, that's right. Haas says check out Landstruck as well. Landstruck was at the Self-Reliance Festival and they're awesome. Definitely check them out as well. But people move here having bought a place and then discover they wish they had bought a place somewhere else. And it's very hard to just visit a state and choose which part of the state you want to be in unless you've spent significant time there. So to the extent that you can do this, if you can rent somewhere, it doesn't have to be somewhere rural, like rent somewhere and not bring your whole flock with you, or find a homestead to rent and be somewhere for 6 months and take that time from that home base to look around and figure out like the lay of the land and the people you like to hang out with. And if you're a churchgoer, the church you want to go to, or if you like to do certain extracurricular activities like soccer or whatever it is, find where that location is and the people you connect with, and then buy. You're more likely to get in a place you want to be. So it sounds like, Tim, you're really motivated to be near your brother-in-law, which is, that's like great, because then you're near family, and with family nearby, you can do a lot. So you're already pretty sure you want to be in that area. If you can like rent there for 6 months, you'll have a better idea of like, do I want to be closer to my brother-in-law or a little further away? Do I really need to be on the Tennessee side or not? And there are just, I don't think the land is going to go away.
Yeah. And
that quickly.
The other side of that too is like, as far as a network goes, from Knoxville to Camden, if you're south of 40, you're easily within 45 minutes of
Somebody.
2 to 3 people in our network. But the topography also very, very dramatically changes as you go from east to west. So that's another consideration that you want to look at, because like most people would not run anything where I'm running sheep because it's steep. So, you know, I just stare in amazement with some of these people coming in here and buying land sight unseen.
Yeah. Well, and the land can be very different. Like ours is steep and rocky, but you can get steep and not rocky, and that's less annoying.
Yeah.
But, you know, that does inform, your land informs what your land is best suited for.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that I'm not doing a bunch of cattle here, even though cattle have been run here and can be run here. They're just very large. They're very large. Okay. I sent you an image from the National Weather Service this morning, and what did it say?
Something about no rain for a month.
So we're coming in on a record number of back-to-back days in the fall in Tennessee without rain. And it looks like we're going to make it through the entire month of October having had no rain. And they wanted to point that out today. So, yeah, Tim, I'm glad we could help you out. So I sent that to Tactical. What's that mean to you?
It means that I'm really glad I didn't continue mowing the rest of the top of the pasture
Why?
because nothing is growing back right now.
Yeah, nothing will grow back. And it means we're going to go through a lot more hay.
We're already going through a good bit of hay.
Yeah, so we need to buy more hay.
The boys are also going through a tremendous amount of water because they're going through a tremendous amount of hay.
Yes. Does that make you wish you had water run back there? That might be worth doing.
That would actually be worth doing.
Joel Salatin would have said we should have done that before we got the sheep.
Well, it would be pointless to run water back there when there was nothing growing that didn't have thorns. So
I don't
that
know.
was step one.
I don't know. Anyway, Packrat says, Tack and Nicole just love a challenge. That's why they're running sheep on rocky hillsides. Well, and sheep are well suited to it, as are goats. So my friend, the window bird, has been joining in the live stream. Yeah. We have a bird that pecks at the window.
And I mean, for me, it's not so much that it's a challenge. It's more along the lines of this is what I have. And if you want to fight about it, let's go.
Yeah. Well, so. and we are making food, right? Like we have 4 rams coming up for slaughter. We'll probably sell 2 of those. And then the other 2 will go into the freezer. And then next year, hopefully we'll have more.
Yeah. So one thing we didn't put on the list was the broken fence.
It's on the list.
Oh, okay.
See, right there, it says the broken fence.
Okay.
He just didn't know I was reading his mind. So the lack of rain is, I think it's something that happens at some point every year. And then we're like, oh no, it didn't rain. And we complain about it. But what that really means is we have to plan for no rain. And then we have to plan for too much rain. And then if we get like one magical year where it's perfect rain for the whole year, we'll just be happy about it.
Yeah.
But homesteading means you are subject to what the weather brings. So we had Brandel out to shoot video for Holler Roast because I realized this year that I need to invest more of my time, attention, and marketing efforts into Holler Roast because that's actually what pays the bills the best. Like, I make a little bit of money when I do classes and events usually, but it doesn't pay the bills. And the product that does pay the bills is the coffee. So then I realized I was spending 20% of my time on Holler Roast and 80% of my time on things that weren't making me very much money. So I thought, you know what? Let's go find the best video guy we can find and pay him a boatload of money to come out here and make videos about Holler Roast and start telling the Holler Roast story, not only to this network, but reach beyond this network and see how it goes because the coffee's actually pretty darn good. Tactical has now walked off to go get some more coffee, so he can't answer the question I was about to ask him. He's coming back in. So Tactical, in advance of Brandel getting here, I will admit we didn't just leave everything the way it was. We actually took the time, and this is something I've never done since the original 2020 setup of the roasting shack. We took the time to take everything out of the roasting shack, decide what still needed to be there, and then reorganize everything in a way that made sense so that the roasting shack had a little more open space. And then once that was done, the night before Brandel was getting here, I took the back off the roaster. And then what did you see?
It actually wasn't that bad. I found a couple of loose crumps on wires, which probably didn't hurt anything, but that was an easy, slightly irritating fix. But other than that, it didn't look too bad in there.
So we were replacing the blower. And for those of you who don't know how my roaster works, it's like a giant hair dryer. And part of why the coffee usually has a lower impact on people's stomachs who have acid sensitivities. And the reason it's so smooth flavored is that I use an air roaster, or it's called liquid bed roasting is the official name of it, if you want to go look it up. And it results in a different flavor of coffee. And in order to do this, I have a giant hair dryer. So I have heat and I have air moving the beans because if the beans stay in one place, they will burn. And I had noticed that my batch size was getting smaller and smaller. And then I had noticed all of a sudden I was getting roasts where it was dark roast mixed with completely unroasted beans. And I reached out to the manufacturer and he said, that's like when we first had the roaster and it had a angle problem in the roasting chamber that meant the airflow was inhibited. And we fixed that like years ago. He's like, it's not blowing right, which either means you have a blockage or your blower's going, and it's about time for your blower to go. And what happens is there's this built-in gasket. And he's like, if you've heard any whistling, that's that gasket failing, and there's not a way to rebuild that. They don't have the parts. So you just have to buy a whole new blower. And then he said, like, here are the 5 things you can do to test that. And instead of doing the 5 things, I just bought the new blower for $171. Free delivery. Because I was like, it's going to take me 3 days to test all those things. And what I know is I've heard that whistling. And I know that rubber gaskets, when exposed to a lot of heat over time, go bad. So the night before the video guy came here, the whole roaster was ripped apart. And I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to roast coffee for the video guy, because that's how we roll. But we got the roaster put back together, and I have a bag of what I call crap beans, which are not very good, and they were really cheap. And they've been in my roasting shack for 6 years now. And I keep those on hand for when I want to do test roasts with equipment, because I'm just going to put them straight in the garden, right? They're just going to be composted. And yesterday I did the first roast on video, and he was like all up in there with his camera, and the roast turned out beautiful. Like with the new blower, it's like she just came off the assembly line. And of course, going into Christmas roasting season, we get a lot higher volume between now and Christmas. And then, it's heavier in the winter, but not like Christmas heavy in the winter. So going into the roasting season, I always want to do all the maintenance on the roaster. So we also discovered that the wall jack was starting to melt. So we're putting in a replacement for that as well. The electrician will be here next week with me to kind of troubleshoot what's going on there. But those loose connections could have been part of the problem. So making sure the loose connections were tight was huge, so that we don't have a problem then like mid-rush. So that was a huge focus for us. And we had a lot of fun shooting video yesterday. We did all the roasting process. And then because like Holler Roast is so grounded in homesteading, right? We had Brandel come out and shoot some of the things on the homestead that are going on. In fact, we brought little sheep over. We brought Stormy, the bottle baby, over on the 4-wheeler. So he has like video of her riding on Tactical's lap and eating. I was like, the one that's easiest to video because she's just not really scared of people is that one. So we brought her over, and he got to, and she kept like walking up to the camera with her nose and smelling it. And he's like, that's the best thing that can happen to a video guy. I'm like, well, not only did she do it once, she did it like 3 times, because she's like, what is that? I need to smell it. So that was a fun part. Carrie Brown is coming out on November 2nd to teach a live class here for $90 a person, partnering with Trees on the Permaculture Homestead. And we weren't 100% sure that class was really going to happen, because with all of the focus in East Tennessee, we're Homestead Made Easy. Welcome to the live stream. With all of the focus on rebuilding East Tennessee, a lot of our community is out there physically rebuilding East Tennessee. And in fact, we have a project starting this weekend in Roan Mountain to get a single wide ready for a family to move in. The owner of the single wide has already sourced the materials. They need to build decks. They need to put in a water heater. It's like a whole thing. And he's interviewing 2 families that he's going to let live there for free for a year. So that's a GSD project that's going on. And if you're interested in helping with that in Roan Mountain this weekend, and I expect future weekends or other days during the week, reach out to us. We are on Telegram, t.me/LFTN group. Okay. So that's what's happening. And so I was like, well, we were planning to do this class about not just how to plant trees, not just how to source trees, but how to partner with trees, how to choose their function or multiple functions on your homestead and what you want them to do before you decide what kind of trees, and then how to source the best varieties of trees for that locally if possible. And yes, we will talk about like the pruning of the roots and the how to plant and how to set that up and tree guilds. But the bigger focus of this, it's more of an educational or classroom type of class where we're learning the theory before we see the practical application. But we're doing it on my homestead. And so we will have some trees we're planting. What that means is because we weren't 100% sure the class would go through until we had students sign up for it, which they did. We hadn't actually chosen all the trees for our homestead that are going to be part of the class. So what we're doing tonight is finishing that selection process with Carrie, and then we'll be sourcing the trees for the class. And what had happened is we did a big tree reset this year where we cut out a bunch of trees that were going to become problems. And
already
were problems. And then we're going to replace those with trees that are serving specific purposes. I will tell you this, on one of the hotter years that I've been here, cutting out a bunch of trees that were providing shade was not super awesome impact wise in certain places on this property. So we have some very dead grass. Yeah. So because they create microclimates, right? And so we had a cooler microclimate down by the cabin in particular, and it is not a cooler microclimate down there right now, except for altitude wise.
Yeah.
But that's why we'll be then replanting some trees with some different specific purposes in mind. Okay, tell us what's up with the ducks and the minerals in the feed. I need a different duck feed because the duck feed we have doesn't have the right balance. And in order to get eggs, we have to add minerals, which is what we're doing. We almost lost 2 or 3 ducks because this feed was not properly mineraled. And this is like an organic, no soy, no GMO feed. And I still need to call them and be like, what's up?
Yeah, and we're still going through that old feed. We have not made it through all that yet.
Well, I don't know that company is trustworthy anymore.
Okay.
But they're the only company we know where we can source it right now. And our local company we used to get it from went out of business.
Yeah.
So that's super awesome. So what's the deal? So we're adding minerals to the water. So what's your idea?
I'm basically going to do the same thing I did for the chicken water. And I will probably just do this one with one of the rubber feed dishes, but basically drilling a couple of holes in the top part of a 5-gallon bucket and putting the lid on. And the way I'm going to do this one is drill a hole big enough in the lid to be able to stick a garden hose. So you stand the bucket upright, stick the hose in the top, fill the bucket, and then you just flip it over in the dish. And because the bucket's upside down, air can't get in unless the water level drains. So it kind of acts like, if you've ever seen the little gravity cat automatic waters that use no electricity, it's kind of like that.
Yeah, so basically he's making the problem he's solving is the amount of water.
Yeah.
So he's making a larger chicken water type thing that just has a little tray the ducks can drink out of. And he's doing this because the ones you buy at the store fall apart.
And they're kind of a pain in the ass.
And they're a pain in the butt to use. And this one isn't. And then that allows us to put a higher volume of water. And the reason we don't have this solved any other way is we don't usually need to water the ducks because God waters the ducks. We have a pond.
Go to the pond.
Yeah, we have a pond and there's a creek nearby and there's not a lot of reason to have waters around, which then means you don't have the problem with the ducks of the poopy waters that you have to clean out in the muddy waters, because ducks will like clean their beaks in it and the mud gets out there. And if they can physically get in it, if a duck gets in water, a duck poops in water. So
yeah. And here's how this normally goes throughout the day. You open the door to the duck coop. The ducks run out. The ducks look in the thing, see if there's water in there. If there's water in there, they take 2 sips out of it, say, cool story, bro. Let's go to the pond.
Yeah. So we're trying to get in those 2 sips the mineral.
Then in the evening, they're going to come up in the vicinity of the duck coop and hang out like, where's my food, bro? And while they're hanging out waiting, that's specifically where I have the waters with the minerals for them. So they're getting that right before they go to bed.
Yeah, the other thing we could do is put out powdered mineral probably and let them free feed it, but that would have to be in the coop.
and that's a whole nother thing that I'm not even trying.
Right,
to
we're
deal
not
with.
going there right now because ducks can be destructive. My property is really well suited for ducks because of this spring-fed pond, which means it doesn't accumulate a lot of duck refuse. And because of that, I'm able to have ducks without two things happening. One, duck poop everywhere, huge problem. Duck poop is dispersed all over the property and then concentrated in the coop, which is why it needs to be scooped out. And if we had chickens in there with them, they help us with the deep litter method. But if not, the ducks like stamp their poop into the ground, and then you have to scoop the coop more, which is something we may talk about as part of our redesign for the duck system. But also because they're free range, they aren't causing concentrated problems, and the watering happens from nature, which is good. So, how was your first fire of the season? Was it everything you hoped it would be?
It was a little bit warmer than I would have liked, but that's kind of the downside of this time of year. It's cold enough you want a fire, but not cold enough that, should I open the window to let some of this heat out?
Yeah. So I heat with fire, tactical heats with fire, and it got down below freezing, and the house got down below 65. And in the height of the winter, when my house is down below 65, I notice it less than at this time of year when my house is down below 65.
Yeah.
I would say that. And I like to be warm, and the wood fire is warm. And it was really funny because Amy Dingman had her first fire of the year about the same time we did, and she singed her bangs. She's like, I've been heating with wood for like decades, and it's like I never lit a fire before. So that is what happens at this time of year. If you haven't had a fire all summer long, is you go to light your fire for the first time, and one of two things happen. One, you're very successful and you singe your bangs. Or you're very unsuccessful and you spend the next 4 hours cussing at the fire trying to get the stupid thing started. Did you have either of those things happen?
No.
What he did was start a fire that was so successful that it developed a thermal battery that accelerated into the night as he went to bed and made him too hot at night. Is that what happened?
No, it was more along the lines of, like, I used some box elder, which is a soft wood, burns hot and fast, to get a bed of coals going, and then not knowing how this wood was going to do, threw 2 logs on, and it just got, I think the cabin went up 15 to 20 degrees inside.
Yeah. So you had like open the window scale heat.
I just kind of was like, I'm going to walk outside for a few minutes, and I'm going to take my sweet time opening the door, let the dog go out, step out on the back porch, and eventually close the back door.
Hey, this year for me is the first year I've ever really nailed my first fire. It started, it heated. I didn't get the backflow of the cold air in the chimney coming back. The fire was the perfect size. So, and that was from wood that had been seasoned for 2 years.
And I guess my adventure for starting a fire this year was we did not punch the chimney after last season, so I wanted to have a fire to dry everything out. And I went to start the fire, got a little smoke coming out the door, and was like, oh yeah, I gotta open the dampener. Open the dampener, and I hear a bunch of creosote drop and hit the top of the fire baffle, and was like, well, I guess I'm going to pull all this back out and start over again because I need to get that off the top of the baffle.
Yeah, it will catch on fire there.
Yeah, and so I dealt with that and then threw everything back in and got it going. But it was like, the advantage to doing that now is the fact that I managed to get the baffle far enough out of the way. I think I can punch my chimney without having to actually take it apart.
I don't remember when we did it, but it was March or April that we took my entire chimney apart and deep cleaned it because it had creosote buildup last winter. So mine is just cleaner going in.
Yeah.
So
mine is not.
We are cleaning chimneys this weekend, and that's something that is pretty easy to do yourself from a DIY standpoint, as long as you can get on your roof safely. And that's something I used to always outsource to chimney sweeps until I moved out here and couldn't find one. And then my neighbor had the sweeping stuff, which, I mean, it's not that expensive to buy.
No.
And you're, as long as you know your chimney's in good condition, which is pretty easy to assess for a wood stove, you just run the thing down it and scrape the stuff off and clean it up. And you end up with black hands if you don't wear gloves. And if you don't think about the fact you're going to have dust and wear a respirator, that's not so good for your lungs. But, like take safety measures, and it's not that hard to clean the chimney. And then we end up cleaning my chimney once or twice in the winter on a nice weekend. And I don't know when you clean your chimney.
When I need to.
When he needs to. So we have the Rams over here. They've been doing well, not skipping the fence, except the other day, Tactical walks up looking like his pants are on fire. And he said, well, the bad news is the Rams are out, but the good news is they're in the paddock. The other paddock right next door. And I was like, okay, do you want help? Paddock. Yeah. Do you want help? And he goes, I don't know. And he walks off. What'd you find?
So once I got back there and got a assessment, it's like, okay, there's a wire down on the permanent fence. I don't see where it's broke. They're contained, because they basically went from the paddock they were supposed to be in into the paddock they were just in. It appeared to be food motivated, but there's also a spot where the ground goes up and down and waves, and you can't really fence low enough.
You would need like 90 poles.
Yeah.
To do this.
Yes. And so I think one of them probably tried to go under and put enough tension on a piece of aluminum wire holding an insulator that it popped. And then the whole wire just loosened up enough for everybody else to charge through. So got them back into the paddock, had her stand there while
my job was to stand at the fence like this. Yes. And look at sheep and say, do not pass. And the sheep completely ignored me and went off and ate food somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
my job was like super critical.
Well, if you hadn't have been there, it would have been me trying to chase them away from the fence while also simultaneously trying to restring a fence, which is never conducive. That's the way that always ends up. But I got that back up and then proceeded to just start dragging logs. Some of them 3-foot logs, some of them, one of them was probably about 10 foot, 12 foot, and laying them underneath the fence. And one spot I actually built something almost kind of like you'd build the corner of a log cabin where one side is stacked on the other. So hopefully that convinces them not to try that again.
Yeah. So that's like typical. Once a week, a fence gets broken because a tree falls on it or something.
Then this morning, may as well go on and tell this story.
I don't even know this story yet.
No, because I haven't told you yet. I walked over just to like look back there and not even count heads. I just want to see at least one sheep where it's supposed to be, because if one of them's there, the rest of them are probably there. And I can see what appears to be, well, I could see a wire going at somewhat of, 2 different angles with what appeared to be a cedar branch laying on top of it. I'm like, okay, I should go deal with that. So I go walking back there, and there's 5 sheep, and one of them's laying down asleep. But as I get up to the fence, sheep does not move. Usually when I come walking up, they will at least pick their head up, turn and look at me to see what's going on. Because you never know when, I might have Timothy pellets or something. But this sheep does not move. And I'm like, please God, tell me he's not dead. And I get him into the paddock and I go walking over there and he still doesn't move. And I'm about to start assessing like dead sheep. And all of a sudden he gets scared, jumps up and runs away. And I'm like, really?
He was asleep on his feet.
No, he was asleep laying down with his head stretched out.
He was just having a good dream.
Apparently, the rest of them were like, what? It's just like,
which one was it?
That was one of the smaller ones.
Was it the black-lipped one?
No, it wasn't him. He was behind the big one, just looking at me like,
what? Yeah, I always thought that one would be friendly, but he ended up not friendly.
He's skittish.
He's really skittish. I think it's because we kept catching him and making him drink milk as a little one.
Probably.
Yeah. So that's okay. Well, look at you opening that water without making a big loud noise.
I'm not coming here with an air horn one day.
Yeah, they'll love you for doing that. Okay, so I promised a beef shawarma recipe because this week we started experimenting with beef shawarma. But I'm going to start with this question. If you saw a restaurant called Green Life Juice Bar and Grill, would you think Mediterranean food?
I would think hippy dippy frou. I want nothing to do with that.
So Jessica suggested we go meet at this place called Green Life, and before telling her no out of the chute, because all I saw was Juice Bar, I was like, I'm gonna go look, and it's like it's like some of the best Mediterranean food I've had in Cookeville, Tennessee. And the guys running it are awesome. And I was like, well, it's got a lot more carbs and stuff I can't eat. Like I can't have falafel and I can't have chickpea anything. And I can't like those things are all things I'm allergic to. But I'm like, they have meat. And so I ordered the shawarma, which was theirs is lamb based. And I was eating it. And I'm like, this is a really good flavor profile. And it's like, what do you do with lamb besides, garlic and rosemary is always the question to ask. So Mom loved it too. And I was like, okay, we got to look up what spices are in this. And so I started looking up all these recipes of shawarma and different ways to do it. And I kind of settled on one spice profile. And then what I didn't do was like pre-sear the meat, because you can do like a bone-in slow cooked roast, or you can just do bits of meat. And I have a whole bunch of beef stew meat to use up from the cows. Like we're kind of into the beef stew meat section. So this week was a really busy week as usual. And we still need to eat dinner at night. And one day I took all of like a whole crock pot full of stew meat. And I didn't even cut up an onion for this. Like usually I would put fresh stuff like that in, but we were in a hurry. And so I added garlic and onions. Garlic was not actually on the list of spices that I saw, but I feel like garlic makes everything better. So I added that. We did cinnamon and cloves. I did a little bit of ginger. I did cumin. And then I did sweet paprika. I did smoked paprika. And I did like hot paprika. And then I added turmeric. And then slow cooked that in the crock pot. And it was, well, how was it?
It was good.
It was good. I think I put too much clove in and a little too much ginger in. So we'll back that off. But everybody really liked it. It was like the first bite, you're like, wow, that's strong. And I was like, yeah, I got to back off. Because, of course, I didn't measure anything. And I put any tomato that was ripe on my counter in there as the broth. So I added some tomato to it as well. Because we're just using up the tomatoes as they get ripe on the counter. So that was my recipe, Curie. And that was the spice profile I went with. Next time I do it, I'll actually measure spices so that we have measurements. But it was all dried spices. So it was dried onions, dried garlic, like all of it. I'll probably do it with fresh if I have fresh next time. And I usually have fresh garlic on hand anyway. But it was a really nice, quick, nourishing crock pot meal. And then I made challah rice with some peas in it, and we made rice for the people who eat rice. So we did serve it over something, and it was good, inspired by the Green Life restaurant in Cookeville, Tennessee, a place I would have never even tried based on their name and their branding until somebody else suggested it, and I actually looked at their menu, and now I'll totally be back. So, like, because the other thing I liked about what they did was they did fresh salads on the side, because I'm eating keto right now, not carnivore, and the salad had mint leaves in it. And I was like, man, I could have been putting mint leaves in salad all summer long because I have so much mint here. So that's going to happen next year. The mint is actually not super happy after the frost. Do you know what a ram apron is?
No.
So if you go Google ram aprons, you get a lot of people in aprons with sheep on them. But a ram apron is a device that you put on a ram and it hangs around their chest and it has a little flap that hangs down and it keeps them from being able to close the deal.
Okay.
So I mentioned that to Mom last night after you left because the thing existed, because I didn't know that you knew the thing existed. And we've been all about, like, how do we keep the sheep separate, like 90 places? I'm like, is it cheaper to buy fencing or cheaper to buy ram aprons and catch all the rams and put an apron on all rams but one and then just have two flocks, the ones with the rams and the ones not with the rams? So we had a very long time last night giggling, looking at these ram aprons, which do exist. They do exist. Like it's easier to find them if you look up like goat aprons, but yeah. And then it was really funny. I think it's Bacchus is the brand we found that seemed to be the highest quality, which is also a hilarious name. And they, at the very end, they're like, you need to check the fit of this every day, and nothing is 100%. So what do you think about that? Are we gonna put little outfits on our rams?
I will live stream you trying to do that by yourself.
Why? It would mean less fencing, tactical.
I would rather deal with the fencing.
Well, if anybody's used ram aprons, I'm curious about if they actually work, because that may be a strategy in the future.
I mean, I have seen something else that basically looks like a walking stockade that basically prevents them from mounting.
Yeah, this one doesn't prevent that. They just can't get anywhere with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, I had to see your reaction when I brought that up. On that note, if you like the show and want to support the work we're doing here, you can do it in two ways. One, get your coffee at Holler Roast. I have this really cool mug today that Rachel made for me that says Nicole Sauce on the back, and it has a Living Free in Tennessee logo on the front. She brought a bunch of mugs like this, not that said Nicole Sauce, but with the logo, to the spring workshop, which we're going to have a pretty cool spring workshop in 2025. So you definitely want to get that. It's the last weekend. I think it's 24, 25, 26 are the dates in April. Get that on your calendars and save those dates, because I'm pretty sure we're going to have Alan Booker out doing a couple of half-day things, and it's going to be, we might be doing, if I can get Mud to come, we might be doing a rocket mess thing as well as all the other, the workshop's going to be a little different this time, but it's going to be super fun. Anyway, get your coffee at hollerroast.com or consider becoming a member. Our next member webinar is October 30th, Off-Grid Water for Your Homestead with Ryan Steva, the homestead consultant.com. And if you don't want to become a member, you can get access to that, $45. If you can't make it Wednesday, the 30th of October at 6 p.m., you do get the recordings afterwards, of course. Okay. With that, guys, go out, make it a great week.